I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, you'll notice, sitting here on the table, we have neither a precision rifle, optic, or equipment. Instead, we have a stand-in today. This is a Colt Combat Commander 1911. It's similar to a government model 1911. It's just about a quarter-inch shorter on the barrel length. And the reason I've got my little Commander here is because we're going to talk about gun safety today, and it's a whole lot easier for me to manipulate a handgun than it is a rifle and stay in frame in the confines of the studio here. So let's talk about some gun safety rules real fast. The reason I want to talk about it is that in the last couple of months I've been reading more and more accounts of negligent or accidental discharges, whatever you choose to call them, people shooting themselves or shooting things that they did not intend to shoot. I've also started to read articles about kids and guns, and it's interesting the different viewpoints that we have on them, on the gun community side and also on the general public side of things. So let's cover the 4 basic safety rules real quick. There are 4 general safety rules, often termed the Firearms Commandments of Safety, that if you follow them, it's almost impossible for you to have an incident where you cause injury to another person. Now, the first and foremost firearm safety rules treat every weapon as if it were loaded. This means if you take it out of the safe, you take it out of the holster, you pick it up off a table, you're at a gun show, etc. If you have not verified that the weapon is unloaded, you must assume that there is a bullet in the chamber and it is ready to fire. This alone would prevent 90% of the firearms problems out there. If you treat it as if it were loaded, then there's no issue. How many times have you heard after an incident where a firearm went off, I thought it was unloaded? I thought the gun was unloaded. I was sure it was unloaded. I'm sure I took the bullets out. Or my other favorite is the guy will remove the magazine and forget about the chamber. Well, if you treat every weapon as if it were loaded, then you don't have these problems. That brings us to the second firearm safety rule. Never point a weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot. I just read one about a gun store employee who was unloading a firearm very similar to this one and shot a customer in the store. How you shoot a customer in the store if you never point a weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot, I have no idea. Always keep weapons pointed in a safe direction. The only exception to that is if you are prepared to shoot someone for lawful causes, then obviously it's very prudent to point the firearm in that direction. If you are unloading, if you're demonstrating, if you're handling, etc., point a weapon in a safe direction. You have to determine what that safe direction is. Is it downrange on a firing range when you're at home? Is it against a brick or cinder block wall? Is it down at a concrete slab floor? If you're in an apartment complex, it becomes even more difficult. Who's in the apartment underneath you? Who's in the apartment above you? Who's on the other side of those walls? So keep this in mind, especially if we're doing dry fire training. We want to point this weapon in a direction that it could catch a bullet if the weapon went off. So never point a weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot. Now, our next, and probably one of the most violated firearm safety rules ever, keep your finger straight and off the trigger until you intend to fire. You see it in Hollywood all the time. They've got their pose, the pistol's up next to their head, and they've got their little piggy finger on the bang switch ready to go off. No, keep our finger straight and off the trigger. Your finger indexes the trigger when your sight's aligned on target. You don't need to tickle the trigger to make sure it's there. When the weapon is pointed downrange and you're on target, that's time to engage the trigger, not before then. If every safety device on your firearm fails, this is the remaining safety device. This finger is what controls it sending a bullet downrange. So this finger is of primary importance. Straight and off the trigger until you intend to fire. Not hooked and off the trigger. This doesn't count. Straight. If you get this finger hooked back here and you're playing around, it's way too easy to slip and fall, trip, etc. and hook it through the trigger guard and engage the trigger. Straight and off the trigger. I prefer to keep it high, straight and off the trigger, keep it up here on the frame when I'm dealing with a pistol. I don't like to get down here on the trigger guard because, again, if you trip and fall, you can reflex back and hook that trigger. So straight and off the trigger. Finally, and you guys with military training may disagree with me on this, but I like to follow along with the NRA safety rules. The fourth safety rule, as per the NRA and most law enforcement organizations, be sure of your target and what lies beyond. This is very important to us high-power rifle shooters because high-power rifle bullets like to go through targets and keep on trucking down range. For instance, when we do our scope calibration drills or our scope verification drills, we're shooting at a cardboard target at 100 yards away. Cardboard target will not phase a 175 grain match bullet. It's just going to keep sailing right through, and you'll get very, very little, if any, drop in velocity as it cruises right through that cardboard. And it's going to continue on down range until either your muzzle elevation causes it to hit the deck or it slams into a backstop. It's going to go a couple hundred yards down range before it hits the ground. If it doesn't hit the ground at a severe enough angle, it may skip and it may just keep on going about ground level after that. So you need to be sure what lies beyond it. Ranges are one thing. If you're a hunter or you're military or law enforcement, this is of primary importance to you because we shoot in field environments. Is that deer, that hog, that antelope you're about to shoot, is there something behind it that's going to catch that bullet if you miss or if the bullet sails on through the animal? You've got to keep that in mind. If you're a law enforcement shooter and you got to put down a deer, a dog, or you have to shoot a criminal, you still retain responsibility for that bullet after it passes through your intended target. It doesn't do you any good if you shoot the bad guy, put that bullet through the side of a house and injure someone inside that house. You still own it. You still have the responsibility for that shot. So you need to know your target and know what lies beyond your target and plan for something to be able to stop the flight path of that bullet once you fire. Now those are the four basic safety rules. That doesn't say that those are the only things you have to worry about, but those four basic safety rules will keep you out of trouble 99.9% of the time. If you hear of an instance where someone had a discharge of a firearm, an unintentional discharge we'll call it, and they injured someone, they violated one of those four safety rules. Whether they violated them unintentionally or not does not matter. The fact is they violated one of the safety rules. Now, I don't like to call them accidental discharges. I like to call them negligent discharges because you had to violate one of the rules negligently in order for the event to occur. The only time I consider it an accidental discharge is if you have a mechanical malfunction of the firearm and it sends a bullet downrange and the muzzle was pointed in a safe direction and the firearm was otherwise handled in a safe manner. Now the beauty of an accidental discharge where you have a mechanical malfunction of the firearm is if you obey the safety rules, then that bullet is going to hit something, it's going to stop, and it's not going to harm anyone. The worst thing you may be looking at is a little bit of debris hitting you from either the backstop or the splash of the bullet itself. But you're not going to put a hole in somebody, you're not going to put a bullet through somebody because you weren't obeying the safety rules. So if you keep those four safety rules in mind, even in the event that you have a mechanical malfunction of a firearm, you're still going to come out of it pretty well. Now, I hate to harp on those rules, but again, they're violated time and time and time again, and somebody gets seriously injured or killed. So as long as we keep those in the top of our mind, then you're going to come out of it okay. I like to use the phrase that familiarity breeds complacency and complacency kills. What happens is you have people out there who have been handling firearms for most of their lives. They figure that since they've been handling firearms for most of their lives, first of all, denial creeps in and says it'll never happen to me. And then the second part of it is the ego creeps in and says, well, I'm better than that. And then what happens, instead of us doing our physical and visual check, we decide, well, just a visual check is good enough. I'm just going to glance. And then over time, that glance turns into I lock the slide back. I know it's empty. And then maybe we don't actually look. We just kind of pan our eyes over it. And that's when you end up having a mechanical malfunction. That extractor doesn't eject that round out of the chamber. You drop that slide on a live round, and next you get a bang when you were expecting a click. One of the favorite firearm sayings I've heard out there is the two loudest sounds you will ever hear when handling a gun is a click when you expected a bang, or a bang when you expected a click. Don't be that guy. Make sure that you know the condition of your chamber. Whether it's hot or whether it's clear, you want to know what's going on inside that pistol, inside that rifle, inside that shotgun, whatever you're dealing with. Now, the second safety topic I want to talk about today are kids and guns. I just read an article out of New York about a probation officer, female probation officer, who is in a hotly disputed custody battle, I guess, with her husband. And they went to family court, and he is arguing in family court that apparently she is unfit because he was floored, the term he used, when he found out that she had allowed her two young children to handle her unloaded service weapon while she supervised them and explained to them about gun safety. Now, this kind of gave me a little bit of a chuckle, but then I realized when I read some of the comments from some of the other officials they interviewed for the article that it doesn't appear to be a widespread thing to teach your kids about guns. I do know there are people out there that say, no, guns are bad, don't ever touch guns, and that's pretty much it. My stance has always been that you want to educate your children, you want to demystify these things. Kids are attracted to strange and mysterious things. If you don't ever let them see a firearm, then the first time they see one, they're going to want to touch it, they're going to want to handle it, and they're going to want to look at it. That's just the nature of kids and curiosity. There's no way that you can kill that. If you have kids that are not curious about the world around them, you got problems. So kids are naturally curious about the world around them. Best way to remove that curiosity about guns is to show them to them. My children have both known since the time that they could talk that the rule in our house was if you want to see the guns, you ask to see the guns, and we'll properly unload them, again demonstrating to them the proper way to unload them, and then we'll show them guns to them. We'll let them handle them, let them touch them, demonstrate to them that they must be pointed in a safe direction, continue to talk about the 4 cardinal safety rules, and really pound it in. In this way, they're learning about firearm safety, but they really don't know they're learning about firearm safety. They're just looking at something cool. Once you've done this a number of times, then they realize that without ammunition, with these things just as they are, they're really not all that interesting. They are nowhere near as cool as a toy with batteries and lights and bleeps and sounds that moves around. So if you give a kid a choice between a handgun or a toy, they're going to choose the toy once this is not a mysterious object anymore, once they understand how this thing works. Now, that doesn't alleviate you from the responsibility to retain control over your firearms. That doesn't mean once you've taught your kids about guns that you can just leave them about, because you don't want to be responsible for that accident occurring. But the thing is, once you gun-proof your kids, you explain to them how firearms work, that they're not toys. Once you follow the NRA's recommendations, check into the Eddie Eagle program, and again, I'll leave a link to that in the comments below, then they'll learn. If you see a gun, stop, don't touch it, run away, and tell an adult. And it works. This is a great program, and it's a great way to educate your kids, because you can't control what your kids see outside of your house. You can't control what your kids see at their friend's house. If they go over to their friend's house and they happen to have an irresponsible parent who has not properly educated their children and leaves a loaded firearm where a child can access it, then your kid's going to know, hey, we don't play with those, we don't touch them, we need to get away from it, and we need to tell an adult about it. And in that case, you saved your own child. You may have saved another child because your child intervened and taught them what the responsible thing to do is. So ignoring it, keeping these things hidden away, keeping them mysterious is the worst things you can do. As a gun owner, you need to teach your kids how to be responsible. You need to teach them what guns are. You need to teach them the safety rules as early as you possibly can, because those safety rules will keep them safe. That's about all we have for this Mail Call Mondays. I know it's kind of short, but these two topics are topics that I really wanted to get out, especially since we're getting around the holidays. Guys are maybe getting a little bit of extra cash to go out and buy a new gun, or maybe finding a new gun underneath the tree, which is always a great thing, ladies. And guys, maybe you've got a lady that likes to get a new gun underneath the tree. But in any way, shape, or form, if you have a friend who ends up with a new firearm over the holiday season, make sure you teach them those 4 safety rules. Maybe drop them a link to this video, take them out shooting, and show them the ropes. If you guys have liked this video, please go ahead and give us that thumbs up. If you got a comment, leave it in the comment section below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you're a subscriber, thank you very much. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. We won't send you a junk mail, and YouTube will let you know when we release new videos. Until next time, get out and shoot.